Today, AI isn't just changing old jobs, it's creating brand new ones. And the interesting part is, some of these new roles can be learned by ordinary people starting from scratch. No connections, no degree, no huge amount of startup money. In this video, I'm going to break this down in plain English and show you why one of the most overlooked new roles right now is showing up in AI trading. And if you've always thought trading was too complicated, too risky, or just not for regular people, stick with me. There's a good chance you've been looking at it through an outdated lens. And just to keep this simple, we're going to cover 3 things in this video. Why AI creates new jobs in the first place, why that matters so much in trading, and what this new role actually looks like. The person managing AI trading bots. If you know nothing about trading, that's completely fine. This video is not for experts, it's for beginners. People who just want someone to explain a real opportunity in normal human language. So let's start with the big picture. Whenever a major technology shows up, it usually does 2 things at the same time. It wipes out some old jobs, and it creates brand new ones. We've seen this over and over throughout history. When machines and factories came in, some forms of work disappeared, but a whole new set of jobs showed up. When the internet came along, old ways of making money faded out, and new ones took their place. Online business, digital marketing, content, remote work, all of it. AI is doing the exact same thing right now. It's changing how people write, analyze, teach, create content, and make decisions. And more importantly, it's creating new roles for people who know how to work with systems instead of doing everything manually. Now here's where most people get it wrong. They assume that if something is new and technical, it must be too hard for a normal person. But that's usually not how it works. At first, a technology is expensive, clunky, and only available to big players with money and resources. Then, over time, it gets simpler. The tools get better. The interface gets easier. You saw that with AI chat tools. At first, most people had no idea what to do with them. Now, millions of people use them every day. And that's when regular people start entering the market. Not because they suddenly became geniuses, but because they understood the new model faster than everybody else. And in my opinion, one of the most interesting places where this is happening right now is trading. Why trading? Because automation in trading is not new. A lot of people think AI trading just showed up out of nowhere. It didn't. Automated systems have been part of trading for a long time. The difference is that, for years, real working systems were expensive, complicated, and mostly locked up inside funds, firms, and larger companies. Regular people weren't really part of that world. But now, the game is changing. AI tools have made this space a lot more accessible. They've lowered the barrier. And more importantly, they're changing the role of the person involved. That's the key shift. Because the old model was, the human does everything. The human watches the charts, analyzes the moves, makes the calls, takes the stress, and usually gets wrecked by emotion. But with AI systems, the role starts to change. Now the person is not there to manually guess every move in the market. The person's job is to understand the system, monitor the logic, and manage the process. That's a completely different role. Not the old school trader. Not the guy sitting in front of 6 monitors all day. Not some Wall Street genius. I'd describe it more simply as this. You're managing an AI trading bot. And to make that feel real, not just theoretical, Let me show you what that actually looked like through someone we worked with directly. A guy named Matthew came into our team. And by the way, some of you may have seen him already. He actually shared his own video testimonial in our Telegram. Now, when Matthew first came in, he had nothing to do with trading. He was a video editor working with us on content. He was living a normal life, doing what a lot of people do, trying to figure out how to earn more without staying stuck in the same income ceiling forever. He wasn't from a finance background. He wasn't trading. He didn't understand markets. He wasn't sitting in front of terminals. And like most beginners, he looked at this whole space from the outside and assumed it was just too complicated. But at some point, he started asking the right questions. Not, how do I make money fast? More like, what exactly are you guys doing? How does this work? And why does this look less like manual trading and more like managing a system? That was the turning point. Because once somebody realizes they do not need to become some elite trader, and instead they just need to learn a clear role around an AI system, the whole thing stops feeling impossible. From there, we showed him the model through a specific tool. And this is where people usually overcomplicate it. From the outside, it sounds like you need to write code, build crazy algorithms, and understand markets at some hedge fund level. But at the first level, that's not really the job. You do not need to build the bot from scratch. You do not need to manually place every trade. You do not need to become some hardcore analyst with 10 screens in front of you. What you need to understand is much more basic. How the system works, what it's tracking, what it handles automatically, what the human is supposed to monitor, and how not to interfere emotionally. So the entry point is not chaos, it's clarity. That's what Matthew started learning, and that's what his new role really looked like. He wasn't manually trading. He wasn't trying to predict every market move. He wasn't staying up all night trying to become an expert in everything at once. He was learning how to manage an AI trading system. That meant understanding what the bot was doing, watching the results, noticing when something moved outside normal parameters, and making decisions based on logic instead of emotion. And honestly, that's the part most people underestimate. When people hear AI trading, they imagine something insanely complex. But in practice, the first job is not to be a genius. It's to be a calm, competent operator. And that's exactly why I think this role is so interesting right now. Because it sits right between two worlds. On one side, it's no longer the old model where the human does everything manually. On the other side, it's still not something that requires a huge amount of capital, some elite degree, or the right connections just to get started. This is what new opportunity usually looks like in the real world. The technology has gotten strong enough to matter, but it still hasn't become obvious to everybody yet. And those are usually the most interesting moments. Because most people always show up late. They notice the opportunity when everybody's already talking about it, when the crowd is already there, when the biggest advantage, getting in early, is already gone. Now let me be clear. This is not a push one button and get rich story. Matthew didn't wake up the next day as a completely different person. First, he saw there was a different model. Then he started understanding it. Then he realized his job was not to become a traditional trader. It was to learn a new role inside a new system. And from there, he started building a different path for himself. That's why this actually makes sense. Not because some random beginner magically turned into the king of the markets, but because a regular person found a way into a new system through a role he could realistically learn. And that's what makes this relevant for a lot of people right now. So if this idea resonates with you, not the old model of become a trader, but the new model of learning how to work with AI trading systems, we put together a free guide for beginners. Inside, we break down what trading bots are, what this model actually looks like behind the scenes, what the human role is, and how someone with zero experience can start understanding it step by step. I don't want to turn this whole video into a full instruction manual, because then we'd lose the main point. And the main point is simple. AI is not only replacing old roles, it's creating new ones. And one of those new roles is showing up in trading right now. If you want to understand it in more depth, the link is in the description. Go to Telegram and walk through it there, step by step.